The movie starts with a woman walking into the kitchen, still reeling from a passionate makeout session with Travis. She glances around the dimly lit room, hearing an odd noise. Calling out for Travis, she heads toward the bathroom and hears the sound of water running in the bathtub. Expecting a romantic bath with him, she undresses and walks in, only to discover Travis lying in the tub, surrounded by blood-filled water. Shocked, she screams, naked, just before a gloved hand pulls her back. Meanwhile, Ellie Warren is driving to her new home while making professional plans for the following morning over the phone. Upon arriving, she notices the unpacked boxes and calls out for her husband, Marcus. They discuss their daughter Brittany leaving for college and their decision to move out of the city. After a thoughtful conversation, Ellie heads to bed and falls asleep. The next morning, Ellie meets her friend Courtney on her way to work. Courtney asks about her new house, and Ellie responds, hinting at some dissatisfaction with her husband. Despite her reluctance, they arrange to meet on Friday, though Ellie isn't particularly excited about it. At her meeting in her office, her boss introduces her as their lead counsel. She then went and introduced David Hammond as their tech consultant. Ellie and David both look surprised as Ellie went on to explain that they went to college together 20 years ago. As the meeting started, Ellie and David were distracted as they couldn't keep their minds off of each other. They will be working together on a case assigned by her boss. After the meeting is over, she gives him her number and decides to meet up another time since she has plans she can't ditch. Marcus and Ellie are having dinner as he tells her about the architect job he got at a firm, which could be a new start for him after the accident. She reminds him to take care, as he is still in recovery. The next day at work, Ellie and David discuss the job they had to get done and how well it was going. He invited her over for drinks to celebrate their victory, but she declined, and he got offended since this is the second time. She turned him down. She tells him she has to meet Courtney for a happy hour, which makes him upset. Seeing this, she ends up inviting him over, saying her friend would not mind. As Ellie gets to the bar, she learns that her friend Courtney has ditched her, which leaves her to spend the evening with David. She tells him that they are alone, and they have wine. He asks her why she is leaving the firm. She tells him about her husband and her daughter in college, and even shows him her picture. He confesses that he is divorced, no kids, and tells her how lucky she is. She tells him she has the perfect life, perfect job, and perfect house, but the man she is sleeping with, her husband, is like a stranger to her. He listened and complimented her emphatically. While in between this, Marcus texts her phone, asking how the happy hour with Courtney is going. She leaves him on red, deciding to enjoy her time with David. They ended up going to the club. When she told David she wanted to go back to the past after a few drinks, David subtly tells her he knew that she worked at the firm. They danced melodically to a slow song. When David starts to lean in to kiss her, she stops and goes to the bathroom for air, but David follows her there and kisses her. As they are making out, taking their clothes off, Ellie stops him and tells him she can't do it, and she leaves. Ellie couldn't keep her thoughts together as they kept going back to what happened in the bathroom. She gets home to find Marcus asleep on the bed while waiting for her. The next morning, she went for a run, and life kept going for her at home too. She was happily enjoying her new place with her husband, and alone too. Everything seemed to go well in every way. David is at his therapist's office, telling her how fine he is now. He tells her that he started seeing a lawyer, but she just got out of a long-term relationship, so he is thinking of giving her some space before he rushes things. His therapist asks him if he remembers coming to her for his court-ordered anger management for the first time, and that he confessed how broken he was over Deborah. She tells him no one could blame him if he still has problems after everything he has been through. Brittany comes to the new home from college and is looking around when Marcus and Ellie find her. They tell her that she would love the private beach. David comes up to her as Ellie is getting to her car in the parking lot. He starts to apologize to her, but she dismisses him, telling him it was the alcohol. He asks why she never answered his phone calls and offers her a coffee, to which she declines politely. He starts to get angry at the man in the car behind and starts honking his car while still insisting on taking her out. She drives off, telling him she can't do this anymore. Ellie keeps getting texts from David until finally she blocks him. Marcus and her have an intimate night while David is outside, creeping through the window and watching everything. The next morning, Marcus came by Ellie's office to surprise her with flowers. They kept on kissing while she showed him her new office, but they were interrupted by a guest. That evening, Brittany got her date to take her out, and Marcus, though, introduced himself as an FBI agent. Courtney soon arrives with her date, which turns out to be David. He introduces himself as if he doesn't know Ellie. He tells them all that he is a hacker. Courtney starts to tell Marcus how she and David met when Ellie interrupts and asks David why he got a divorce. He answers with the same words she told him about her husband, Marcus. When she feels awkward, Ellie gets up to get them dessert, and David follows. She angrily tells him to find an excuse and leave. He then leaves with Courtney. Ellie finds a package when she gets home from her morning run. She meets David in a cafe and tells him to stop contacting her and her family, to which David angrily calls her Deborah. Confused, she leaves, telling him what happened in the past has to stay there. Courtney and Ellie meet, but Courtney won't listen when she tells her that David is unstable, as she keeps accusing Ellie of the lies. David told her instead. He brainwashes Courtney and even shows her evidence to prove that Ellie is the one who wants to have an affair with him. He is out in the parking lot, watching as they fight. Ellie decides to go to the city and talks with a professor about David. She learns about Deborah, David's ex-wife, and she also learns that he might be the one who's responsible for her death after their divorce. That night, David sneaks into Ellie's house and steals her private clothes. Ellie, who's worried sick about her friend, leaves voice notes to Courtney, which leaves an answer, and tells her assistant to not let David into her office. At dinner, Ellie is distracted. To make the matter worse, she receives a video of her and David dancing the other night on her phone. David tells her he knows about her asking around about him. She starts to freak out and leaves the dinner table to call David. What she didn't know is that David had planted cameras in her house the other day. He sneaked into her house and was watching her every move. Restless, Ellie is still trying to contact Courtney, but David always seems to get in the way. Courtney wears the lingerie David stole from Ellie, thinking he bought it for her. Ellie is now watching and following David's every move. She was shocked when she found out David was going to play golf with Marcus. After playing golf for a while with Marcus, he started asking questions. Marcus tells him about his accident, and he also tells him about his marriage going well. David looked around, and for a moment, he was close to hurting Marcus. Ellie waited until David left his hotel room to get in. She starts looking around and finds a separate room, which was full of pictures he collected of her and Courtney, plus her daughter and her husband. Suddenly, the door opens and David walks in. She hid behind a kitchen counter, and as soon as he left, she called Courtney and told her about David being a murderer. David knocks on Courtney's door and gets in. Courtney, who was suspicious about David, started going through his phone. The moment she discovers what Ellie told her was the truth, David creeps behind her and slams her head to the wall. Ellie rushes into Courtney's house and finds her friend lying on the ground, blood on her forehead. She calls the police. Marcus also comes rushing in, asking if she is okay and asking about what happened. Ellie asks him to take her home and that she'll explain everything. Marcus is hysterical when he learns about all that's happened. He was mad at David for being so friendly and showing up at the house. He asks why she didn't tell him about their affair, but Ellie, full of guilt, tells him what happened, crying. David is seen on the beach, holding a lighter and gasoline. He kept turning the lighter on and off as a homeless man was lying and glancing at him. Quite early in the morning, a detective came by and told the news about David's side to Ellie and Marcus. She confirms that the handwritten letter is surely from David. There were frequent searches about suicide on his computer. He burnt himself to death. She told them that DNA samples would be hard to get tested, but it's certainly David. The detective also tells her that Courtney is doing fine at the hospital. Ellie apologized to Marcus, but he calmly tells her that he loves her and that she is stuck with him. On a fine day, Marcus and Ellie are watching their daughter and her boyfriend on the beach. When Ellie gets in to make some tea, the news on the TV was reporting about David's death and how he was a killer. His therapist was giving an interview when Ellie turned off the TV and went to the kitchen. Ellie gets a text from her assistant saying she needs to sign some papers before the holiday, so she went to her office, but it got dark once. She got there, and she finds the documents, but something seems off. She stumbles over Linda's body on the ground. Right at the same time, she gets a call from Linda. David spoke, telling her she left her family alone. While driving back to get home, she calls the detective and informs her that David's alive. Once she got home, the house was dark. She first finds her daughter's boyfriend passed out on the balcony. David opens an old song from their senior year at college. David tells her that they still can be together. Ellie, who knew he wouldn't change his mind unless she pretended to agree with him, starts to play along. She grabbed a knife and tried to stab him with it, but he stopped her. She got him off of her and ran downstairs to find Marcus and her daughter Brittany tied up in a room. She unties them and sees that the police are there, so they ran back upstairs to go out the front door, where the police car was waiting. But the police were stabbed in his neck. As Ellie is trying to reach for help, David makes it out of the house and starts attacking her. Marcus gets back from Brittany, and he and David start having a violent fight. In the midst of this, Ellie stabs David and runs back to her husband. Soon they start to get away, but David takes the injured police gun and chases them around the cliff. Marcus gets out of sight when Ellie turns around to find David standing behind her with the gun ready to shoot. Marcus comes up behind him and attacks him. They all have a fierce fight, which finally leaves David hanging off the cliff. Ellie holding his hand, Marcus gets behind and holds Ellie, but she lets go, which leaves David to his death. 2 months later, the movie wraps up with Brittany heading off to college. Ellie and Marcus are eager to return to the city, marking the end of their chapter. With that, the movie concludes. We hope you enjoyed the video. Check out the next recaps on the screen, and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible recaps. See you in the next one.